Hello everyone! Today we continue our exciting story about family reunion, love, and revenge. In the previous part, Ryan met his daughter Sarah, and also ran into his ex-wife Lisa. Their meeting was full of drama and unexpected twists. In this part, we are waiting for the continuation of this emotional confrontation. We will find out how the fate of Ryan and Sarah will turn out after the operation. Will Ryan be able to fully recover from the injury? And how will the relationship between Ryan and Lisa develop after a frank conversation? In order not to miss the continuation of this exciting story, be sure to click one damn subscribe button, and then YouTube will recommend you a new part of this story. The most important thing is hope. Chapter 2. Okay, let's go. I'll have Bob drive us. They walked out of the room together and headed to Sarah's room. Bob, I need you to take Lisa and me to an alley near Riverside, Ryan said. What? Asked Bob. Do you know the area? Asked Ryan. Of course I do, but are you sure? Asked Bob. It's a pretty rough neighborhood. We're not there for long, Ryan said. What's going on? Asked Sarah. Just going to take care of some things, Ryan said. Don't worry, we'll be back. I love you, Daddy, she exclaimed. Ryan looked at her for a moment before answering. It had been years since anyone had said those words to him. I love you too, Princess, he said. Get some rest. We'll be right back. They walked in silence to Bob's car and got in. Bob started the engine and looked at Ryan. What's going on? He asked. Really? Just a friendly get-together, Ryan said. Bob didn't believe him, but decided it was best not to bring it up. He put the car in gear and pulled into the street. They saw Jake's Jaguar parked at the curb and pulled in behind him. Ryan looked around to see if Jake had any guards or snipers. When he didn't see any, he got out of the car, and Lisa and Bob did the same. They entered the alley and saw Jake leaning against a dumpster with an expensive jacket over his shoulder. Stay here, Ryan said to Bob. Keep an eye on me, and hold my hat. Bob took Ryan's battered Stetson and stayed behind while Ryan and Lisa walked to the alley. Well, the cuckold is back from the grave, Jake said with a grin on his face. I thought you were killed 3 years ago in the Middle East. I guess if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. I think so, Ryan said. Lisa stood back and watched the two men interact. You know, I'm a third-degree black belt, Jake said. I've won a bunch of tournaments. What do you want? A medal or something to pin it on, said Ryan. Jake hummed. A sense of humor, I see, he said. Good. If you thought that was funny, look at this. You know what the funniest thing about seducing a married woman is? No, but I'm sure you'll tell me, Ryan said. Yeah, Jake grinned. The best part is knowing she'll take her infidelity to her husband. So Lisa was just an errand girl for you? Asked Ryan. She was the best errand girl I ever had, Jake said. I watched her slowly lose her love and respect for you for 6 months. Then I talked to your daughter, convinced her to go along with my little plan to ruin your life. So you just used them for your own satisfaction, Ryan said. Jake shrugged. Yes, he said. And you want to know why? Because I could. And I'm still doing it. I'm sorry, Lisa. I didn't mean to just let it go like that. They were just nice evenings. I still love you. You fucking piece of shit, she said. It's not exactly a secret, Ryan said. I guess not, Jake said. So are we going to send this show of yours on its way? Or are we just going to stand there and gawk all fucking day? Let's see what you've got, Ryan said. Jake grinned and assumed a fighting stance. Ryan shook his head and chuckled. Jake threw a leg kick, which Ryan easily blocked. Boy, if you use all that martial arts crap on me, it's going to get really expensive, Ryan said. Jake chuckled and lunged at Ryan, but he was ready as Jake telegraphed his moves. Ryan was throwing punches like a blur to Jake's throat, solar plexus, and finally his groin. When Jake rolled over onto his back, Ryan picked him up and ran toward one of the brick walls that lined the alley. He heard the crack of bones as Jake's back collided with a large metal pipe sticking out of the building. Jake cried out in pain, and Ryan pulled him to the ground. Without wasting time, he punched him. Jake winced in pain. Yeah, can't breathe, Jake gasped. Ryan ignored him. "Ryan, please stop," Lisa cried. "You're killing him." Ryan looked at her with his one kind eye. "Yes, exciting, isn't it?" he said with an evil glint in his eyes. He lowered his gaze and saw Jake's face begin to turn blue. He watched the man gasp desperately. Ryan knelt down next to Jake and whispered loud enough for Lisa to hear him. "Our time is at an end, Jake, old boy," he said. "But know this. If you ever raise a hand to Lisa or do anything to hurt anyone in my family, I swear to God, I'll hunt you down like a dog. Do you understand me?" "Yeah," Jake wheezed. "Yeah, what?" exclaimed Ryan. "Yes, sir," Jake said. Ryan nodded his head. "By the way," Ryan added, "parts of that dossier are sent to the feds anonymously. That is, the parts that relate to your illegal transactions. But you promised," Jake grumbled. "So I lied a little bit," Ryan said. "You know that, don't you? I couldn't hide illegal behavior. That would have made me an accessory after the fact. You have a good day, you hear? And remember, I was never here." Ryan stood up and looked at Lisa. "So this is the piece of dog shit you and Sarah left me for," he said, kicking Jake once more. "I hope it was worth it. By the way, maybe we should call an ambulance. I think he slipped on something." "Some part of me wants him to lie there and die," she said. "But that wouldn't be right, would it?" Ryan shrugged. "I'll call, but it'll be the last thing I do for him. Maybe I'll tell them he slipped on a banana peel." Ryan smiled. "You could have taken him Jag to the hospital," Ryan said. "I don't think he'll be able to drive for a long time." Ryan turned and walked away, grabbing his hat as he passed Bob. "What now?" asked Bob as they walked to his car. "There's a Holiday Inn Express a couple blocks from here," Ryan said. "Take me there if you could, please." A few hours later, Ryan picked up his hat and was about to leave for dinner when there was a knock at the door. He expected a visit from the local police, but when he looked through the peephole, he saw Lisa with a young man dressed in a white shirt, vest, and tie. He asked what she wanted and opened the door. "It's good to have you here," Lisa said. "Can we come in for a bit, please?" Ryan looked around, saw no one, and noticed a cart between them. "I was just going to go get something to eat, but yeah, come on in," he said, opening the door and stepping back. "You can put that on the table," Lisa said to the man next to her. "Yes, ma'am," he said, rolling the cart up to the table. Watching Ryan, the man pulled 2 set dishes from the box on the cart and placed them on the table. Placing a bucket of ice on the table, he opened a bottle of wine and poured it into 2 flutes, which he placed next to the set dishes. When he had finished setting the table, he opened the dishes. "Cornish game hens," Lisa said. "This is one of my favorite dishes, served with carrots, onions, steamed mushrooms, and rice pilaf, and a nice Cabernet Sauvignon." She turned to the man next to her. "Thank you, Raoul, that'll be all. I'll bring the dishes with me." "As you wish, ma'am," the man said quietly. "Enjoy your dinner, sir," he said to Ryan. "Thank you, Raoul," Ryan said. The young man turned and left the room, pushing a cart in front of him. Ryan looked at Lisa. "You didn't have to do that," he told her. "I wasn't going to," she said. "It was supposed to be Jake's dinner tonight, but he's in the hospital, and I don't think he'll be able to eat at home for a while. The staff worked on this dish for hours, and I couldn't just throw it away. Besides, Bob told me you only eat TV dinners and raw hot dogs, so I thought for once you could enjoy a real meal." "Was that supposed to be Jake's dinner?" asked Ryan. Lisa nodded her head. "Yes," she said. "Well then," he said. "In that case, let's dig in. I'll be more than happy to eat his dinner. By the way, how's Jake?" "He's gotten better," she said, sitting down. "He's got a few broken ribs. His throat is damaged, and the doctor said he'll probably end up losing one of his... Also, there's a chance he'll be paralyzed for life from the waist down. Whatever you hit him with, you've severely damaged his spine." "Well, forgive me if I don't wish him a speedy recovery," Ryan said, taking a bite from the bird on his plate. "By the way, this is delicious. My best wishes to your chef." Lisa smiled. "Thank you," she said, taking a bite from her food. Before she spoke, she regarded him for a while. "What happened to you, Ryan?" she asked. "What do you mean?" he asked. "You've changed," she said. "Yeah, That's what happens when the people you've loved more than life put a stick in your wheels, he said, taking a sip of wine. I'm really sorry about that, she said. So what have you been up to since we broke up? I know Sarah tried to contact you, but she never could. What happened? I sold the house and rented a small apartment, Ryan says. For a few months I cried in the beer hall, basically feeling sorry for myself. When I saw the article about you and Jake getting married, I went to a bar to get drunk, bumped into an old army buddy, and he got me a job. I spent the next 9 years working as a private security consultant. What? Asked Lisa. Mercenary, he said. Gun for hire. Made a hell of a lot of good money doing it, by the way. Besides, it gave me a chance to take out the anger I felt toward the three of you. You must really hate us, she said. You have no idea, he said. Every time I pulled the trigger, I saw you, or Sarah, or Jake. Oh my God, she said. Ryan, I'm so sorry. I had no idea it would hurt you so much. I thought you'd just find another woman and move on with your life. Ryan shook his head. No, he said. Don't get me wrong. I've dated a lot of women, but I'm done with relationships. 1 bite, 2 bites shy, I guess. What about now? She asked. Is there someone in your life right now? A girlfriend or something else? Ryan shook his head. No, he said. Tried it once, didn't help. Like I told Bob, if I get that hard, I go into town and rent someone for a couple hours. You must be so lonely, she said. I'm alone, but I'm not alone, he said. Do you still hate us? Asked Lisa. No, he said. Not that much, anyway. I've forgiven Sarah, in case you were wondering. What about me? She asked. After today, I feel like I can be in the same room with you and not feel the urge to strangle you, he said. Thank you for that, I guess, she said. You forgave Sarah. Why not me? I read her letters, he said. Bob brought them to me. After reading them, I realized she'd been manipulated. After all, she was young, inexperienced, and impressionable. You and Jake took advantage of that. He promised expensive cars, expensive education, and trips to fancy places, and there was no way I could compete with that. But she grew up and realized what she did was wrong. She tried to tell me about it, but I never got her letters. I'm sure if I knew how to use email back then, she would have contacted me that way too. Hell, I didn't even know how to use a computer, let alone email. I didn't even know how to use a cell phone. I still don't have one, by the way. He took a sip of wine before continuing. On the other hand, you didn't have that excuse, Ryan said. You weren't blackmailed. He seduced you, and you said yes. Then you helped him turn Sarah against me. That's not something I can just forgive or forget. You destroyed me. Intentionally. Believe me, it would have been better if you'd just blown my head off. I never thought about it, she said. I'm really sorry. Anyway, in my last job, I worked for an oil sheikh in the Middle East, Ryan says. He was being pressured to sell out, and he was attacked. I was hired to help train his security forces. Guess who was after him? Jake? She asked. Bingo, Ryan said. You know, you'd be surprised who's hiring mercenaries these days. Turns out Jake hired a group to take over the sheikh's oil fields. Kind of a carrot and stick approach. If negotiation doesn't work, use force. Turns out, Jake found out I was working for him, and he put some assholes in place to take me out. I guess he decided to take out 2 birds with 1 stone. Is that how you lost your eye? She asked. Ryan nodded his head. Uh-huh, he said. They came close but missed. The sheik knew, but didn't inform Jake or his representatives that I was still alive. How do you know all this? Asked Lisa. He gave me a dossier with all sorts of very interesting information, Ryan says. He also gave me a little fatherly advice. Something to the effect of getting rid of hate before it kills me. Of course, he was right. He paid my medical expenses, gave me a very large bonus, and advised me to find somewhere quiet and peaceful. So I bought a house in West Texas and started my little business. Surgery? Asked Lisa. Yes, he said. I've spent about $3 million over the last 3 years to keep Jake under constant surveillance. Even recruited a few moles at Night Petroleum. You'd be amazed at what I've learned. This is the file you were talking about earlier, right? She asked. Yes, that's right. Tell me something, Ryan said. All that stuff Jake said in the alley, Is it true? Did you really do all that to me? Her face flushed, and she lowered her eyes for a moment before answering. Yes, I'm sorry to say, but I am, she said quietly. I can't put into words how ashamed I am of what I did to you. You didn't deserve any of it. Suppose the shoe would have been on the other foot, Ryan said. What if it had been me cheating on you? How would you have reacted? I would certainly be furious, she said. I know it sounds hypocritical. That's right, he said. What if I told you that I had ironclad proof that Jake was indeed cheating on you? That, in fact, he had been cheating on you for at least 3 years? How would you feel about that? You were there in the alley. You heard what he said. I'd like to see that proof, she said. Jake reached into his duffel bag, pulled out a folder and a notebook, and held it out to her. Here you go, he said. Written reports, DVDs of photos and videos, even certified copies of his children's birth certificates and DNA test results, proving he's the donor. I was told that this evidence is more than enough for a judge to grant you a divorce on the grounds of infidelity. She flipped through the pages in the folder, shocked by what she had read. Finally, she closed the folder and wiped a tear from her eye. Hurts like hell, doesn't it? He asked. Yes, she said quietly. I've suspected for a long time, but I had no proof. I bet that made you happy, didn't it? I have to admit, when I first found out about it, I was kind of thrilled, Ryan said. Cheating on the guy she's cheating on the guy she originally cheated with? Talk about poetic justice. And then I remembered how I felt at first. At least I told you, she said. 6 months later, Ryan replied. Speaking of which, how did that happen? How did he manage to turn you two against me? Would you like to be shown? She asked. No, the scrappy version is fine, he said. It started after I was hired as his assistant, she says. At first he was professional, friendly, polite. Then he turned on his charm. You know, I traveled all over the world with him on business trips. We stayed in the best hotels, ate at the best restaurants. I met many of what you would call assholes. Celebrities, members of Congress, business tycoons, heads of state. I even met the president once. Jake started making little statements here and there, telling me that this could be my life if I chose. He was constantly belittling you, telling you that you were just a scrappy monkey who would never amount to anything and couldn't give Sarah and I the life we deserved. After a while, I started to see you the same way he did. I don't know exactly when it happened, but I lost all respect for you. On the one hand, I knew you were working hard for Sarah and me, and I knew you had a dream. But on the other hand, I knew Jake was right. The evenings just came naturally, I guess. She looked down at the floor, her face flushed with shame. I'm so sorry, Ryan, she said. I realize now that I acted like a selfish fool. Now I can only hope that one day you can forgive me. I'm not your confessor, he said. When did he start hitting you? About 4 or 5 years ago, she said. I accused him of having an affair. I had no proof, just rumors I heard in the office. We had a big fight and he slapped me. I told him that if he slapped me one more time, I would divorce him. It didn't happen again for quite a while. He didn't hit me, but he was very abusive. Now it happens about once every couple of weeks. Why didn't you call the police? Asked Ryan. You could have put him in jail. I was afraid, she said. I saw what he was doing to people, and I didn't want to end up dead. Dead? He asked. She nodded her head. He was the one who told me you were dead, she said. The way he said it scared me. He never said anything specific, but somehow I knew he was involved. I see, Ryan said. By the way, there's one more thing I think you should see. He pulled an envelope out of his duffel bag and showed her the letter inside. It was a letter Sarah had sent him years ago. He pointed to the paragraph he had highlighted. I hate this place, Sarah wrote. I hate Jake and I hate Mom. He's creepy, Dad. You have no idea. He stares at me all the time and makes rude comments. I swear if he touches me, I'll kick him in the balls like you taught me. I wish you were here to kick his ass. I try to tell my mom, but she never listens. She's too wrapped up in his money to care. Lisa handed the letter back, a tear rolling down her cheek. Oh God, she said. My own daughter hates me. I don't think she thinks that anymore, Ryan said. Judging by the postmark, this was written about a week or so after she feminine charms and get it out of me, asked Ryan. Maybe feed me some homemade lasagna? She giggled. Maybe, she said. Well, that's not going to happen, he said. I promised anonymity, and I'm keeping my word. Besides, it's out of my hands now. I understand, she said. Completely. I won't push. I promise. They pulled up in front of the terminal, and Lisa stopped the car. She pulled a box out of her purse and held it out to him. What's that? Asked Ryan. Just a little gift, she said. I know you don't have a cell phone, so I got you one. It's the newest one, with all the features. You'll be able to text, email, take pictures, shoot videos, anything you want. I've already set it up with your area code and programmed it with my number and Bob and Sarah's numbers. Thank you, he said. You didn't have to do that. I know, she said. But you promised to stay in touch, and I think this is the best way. Is there an instruction manual? He asked. Of course, she said. Good, he told her. There'll be something to read on the way back. She walked with him to the check-in counter and waited for him to get his boarding pass. She stayed with him until he reached the security checkpoint. I think that's where we say goodbye, he said. Not goodbye, she said. Just goodbye. At least for now. Let me know when you get home, okay? I will, he said. She kissed his cheek. It was good to see you again, Ryan, she said. I'm really sorry about the way things turned out. He nodded his head. I know. It was good to see you too, he said. Tell the kids I said hi for me, okay? She smiled. I will, she said, and walked away. He watched her leave before getting in line for the security check. A few hours later, he was standing in front of his house after the cab dropped him off. Home, shit, home, he thought to himself, looking at the old place. The paint had peeled off, exposing the boards that had turned gray from time. It all looked sad. A cartoon house with a sad face appeared in his imagination, with a tear dripping from one downcast eye. It reflected what he had been feeling for quite some time. He was ashamed of himself for letting the old house fall into such disrepair. It had been good for him, giving him shelter from the elements, keeping him warm in the winter and cool in the hot summer. But something had changed in him over the past few days. He no longer felt the pervasive anger and hatred that had kept him company all these years. Perhaps, he thought, it was time to reflect that back to the house. Me hand and foot, but I guess you can if you don't mind sleeping on the couch or the floor, he said. On the couch or on the floor? She asked. Yeah, Ryan said. I only have one small twin bed, and that's what I sleep on. If Bob's there, he takes the couch. That just leaves the floor. But it's a pretty big apartment, so there's plenty of floor. At that, she grinned. I remember a time when we could make good use of a double bed, or the couch, or the floor. But at least it's a start, she said. Speaking of tomorrow, when are you going back to the hospital? I have an appointment with Dr. Fritz before noon, he said. Bob will pick me up around 10 o'clock. Okay, she said. I'll see you at the hospital. Good, he said. And thanks for dinner. It was the best I've had in years. She smiled and kissed his cheek. Why don't you help me carry this to the car? That would be nice, she said. Thanks. They collected the used dishes, made sure the wine was corked, and took everything to the car. After everything was loaded and secured, Lisa looked at Ryan one last time. I'm sorry I messed up, she said. I hope one day you can let go of your hatred for me and learn to forgive me. One day at a time, Ryan said. This lunch was a good start. Thanks again. Anytime, she said, and hugged him. She was surprised that he hugged her back like he usually did. She got into the car, and a tear rolled down her cheek. How could I have been so stupid and selfish, she thought to herself. He waved and watched her drive away, lit a cigarette, and went back to his room. The next morning, Bob picked him up at 10 o'clock, and they went to the hospital. I heard you and Lisa had dinner last night, Bob said. Yeah, Ryan said. She brought Cornish hen. Good stuff, huh? Asked Bob. Say what you want about Jake, but his staff sure can cook. Do you two get a chance to talk? Yeah, we did, Ryan said. I think we got off to a good start, for Sarah and little Ryan's sake, he added as Bob smiled. Sure, Bob said. They drove to the hospital and went to see Dr. Fritz. Mr. Caldwell, the doctor said as they entered, please step into my office. They entered the small office and the doctor closed the door. What do you say, Doc? Asked Ryan. Good news, Mr. Caldwell, Dr. Fritz said. You two are perfect for each other. Great, Ryan said. So when do we start? I have a surgery room reserved for 1 o'clock this afternoon, the doctor said. We'll take you and Sarah at the same time, put both of you under anesthesia, and then we'll be done. The doctor went on to explain the procedure, which seemed rather painful to Ryan. Don't worry, Dr. Fritz said. You'll be under anesthesia the whole time. We'll keep you overnight to manage the pain. You'll be quite sore for a while, but it will pass. How soon will we know if it works? Asked Ryan. We'll find out soon after the procedure, the doctor said. Okay, Ryan said. Is it okay if we go up to Sarah's now? Of course, Dr. Fritz said. We'll need to examine you pretty soon, so don't procrastinate. Got it, Ryan said. He stood up, shook the doctor's hand, and they left. They went to Sarah's room and told her the news. Oh, thank goodness, she said. I was told we'll be prepped for surgery soon. Have you talked to your mom? Asked Ryan. Yeah, she came by earlier and said she was going to see her lawyer, Sarah said. She's going to get a divorce? I think so, Ryan said. About damn time, she said. Bob told me what you did to Jake, she added. I heard you were too easy on him. Your mom said he could be paralyzed from the waist down, Ryan said. He got off too easy, she said bitterly. Something tells me the real fun is just beginning, Ryan told her. You mean there's more to it? She asked. Ryan smiled and winked at her, making her smile. Great, I can't wait. After they chatted for a bit, Dr. Fritz came in with a couple of nurses. Good, you're all here, the doctor said. It's time to get you two ready. Mr. Caldwell, please go with Nurse Jacobs. She will register you and take you to your room. Good, Ryan said. He leaned over to his daughter, hugged her, and kissed her cheek. Showtime, he said with a smile. She smiled back at him. It's going to be just fine, he said. Following the nurse, he walked out of the room and over to the desk next to the nurse's station. After filling out what seemed like a whole pile of paperwork, he was escorted to a room and handed a hospital gown. After he was ready, they put an IV in his arm and checked his vitals. Soon, he was wheeled out of the room and into a rather cool surgical suite. He had already been sedated and was feeling its effects. Dr. Fritz looked at him, and Ryan realized he was smiling. Ready? The doctor asked. Do it, Ryan said. They put something on his face, and he fell asleep. The next thing he realized was that he woke up in his room. It took him a while to get his bearings, but when he did, he felt pain in his hips. The doctor had warned him that this could happen. A few minutes after he woke up, Dr. Fritz came into the room and examined him. How are we feeling? He asked. Ryan chuckled to himself. Why do they always say, we? He asked himself. My hip hurts like hell, Ryan wheezed. That's normal, Dr. Fritz said. We'll give you something for the pain. We usually do this as an outpatient, but since you're from out of town, I'll leave you here overnight to monitor your recovery. How's Sarah? Asked Ryan. I think she'll be fine, the doctor said. It's too early to tell, but she seems to be responding better than we expected. Ryan nodded his head. When can I see her? He asked. Oh, not until tomorrow, Dr. Fritz said. I want you both to come to your senses a little first. Get some rest now, Mr. Caldwell. I'll check on you later. A nurse came in, checked his vitals, and gave him a pain pill. Get some rest, Mr. Caldwell, she said. If you get hungry, just call the kitchen and let them know what you want, okay? Thank you, he said, and fell asleep. Waking up a couple hours later, he looked at the menu. He called the kitchen, placed his order, and an employee brought him his meal. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes and gravy, and string beans. It was somewhat better than the TV dinners he was used to, but not by much. Still, it did relieve his hunger. He had just finished eating when he heard a knock on the door. Yes, he echoed. Bob and Lisa entered the room. They took up positions on either side of him. How are you feeling? Asked Lisa. It hurts, he said. But other than that, everything's fine. Doc says I'll be discharged tomorrow. All right, Bob said. How's Sarah? Asked Ryan. Bob nodded his head. She's doing better than everyone expected, he said. They're very optimistic. That's good news, Ryan said. Before he spoke again, he looked at Lisa. How are you doing? I'm furious, she said. I met with an attorney this morning and started divorce proceedings. I've also started the process of dividing our assets. It's a community property state, so technically I'm entitled to half of all our assets. The only snag is the prenup he made me sign, but my lawyer thinks he can get around that. Well then, you should be in good shape, Ryan said. Theoretically, Lisa said. We'll see. It won't be an easy divorce, certainly not like ours. I guess not, Ryan told her. I also want to get a restraining order to keep him away from me, the house and Sarah, she said. I don't think that will be a problem. Have you seen Jake yet? He asked. Not yet, she said. I'm not going to see him until he's served. He's still in the hospital and will probably be there for a while longer. And then who knows? Look, I'd better get going. I've got a lot to do. I'll come back tomorrow, okay? Of course, Ryan said. How long will you be here? She asked. I don't know, he said. Maybe another day or so. I want to make sure Sarah's going to be okay before I head home. Okay, she said. I'll see you later then. I'll see you around, he said. To his surprise, she leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Sweet dreams, she said with a smile. Before he could react, she was already out the door. He glanced at Bob and saw the questioning expression on his face. What? Asked Ryan. That must have been the dinner she gave you last night, Bob said. Ryan smiled. Yes, it was, he said, but that's all it was. Whatever you say, Bob said. If you don't mind, I'll check on Sarah and then I'll head out. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, Ryan said. I'll see you then. The next day, he found that his hip did not hurt as much as before, but it still hurt, and it was difficult to walk without support. The nurse brought him a cane, and he found that it helped a lot. After lunch, the doctor examined him and wrote a prescription for painkillers. The nurse brought the wheelchair and wheeled him into Sarah's room, where Bob was already waiting. "Daddy!" exclaimed Sarah when she saw him. "How are you feeling?" "Better," he said. "How about you? You're better looking. At least you have some skin color." "I'm still pretty sore," she says, "but the doctor says I'm doing much better than they expected." "I'm glad to hear that, Princess," he said. They talked for another long time, until Ryan noticed that Sarah looked a little tired. He looked up at Bob. "Would you give me a ride to the hotel?" he asked. "Not at all," Bob said. They said their goodbyes, and the nurse wheeled Ryan to the patient gathering area where Bob had parked. "Are you going to get to your room okay?" asked Bob. "I can handle it," Ryan said. "They gave me some pills and this cane, so I'll be fine." "Okay," Bob said. "Shall we pick you up tomorrow? Say around 10 o'clock? "Yeah," Ryan said. "It's working. I'll see you around." Ryan climbed out of the RAV4 and walked to his room, leaning on his cane. That night, as he lay on his bed in his pajamas watching television, there was a knock on the door. "Just a minute," he said, picking up his cane. Limping, he walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Seeing Lisa and noticing that she was alone, he opened the door. He was still expecting a visit from the local authorities, so he looked back as she stepped inside, carrying what appeared to be a large picnic basket. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by," she said. "Have you eaten yet?" "No, not yet," he said. "I was just sitting here watching TV." "Why don't you get out of your seat and I'll get you dinner," she said. "Do you still like lasagna?" "I like it a lot," he said. "Okay," she said, setting the large basket on the floor. Opening it, she pulled out a portable tray and set it on the bed opposite his lap. She then pulled out a covered dish and silverware and placed them on the tray in front of him. Then she pulled out a jar of green tea. "Do you have any ice?" she asked. "Yes," he said, pointing to a bucket on the dresser. She put ice in a plastic cup and poured tea into it. Thanks, he said, as she set the tea on the nightstand next to him. Aren't you going to eat? I've already eaten, she said. So what led to this? He asked her. I remember how much you liked my lasagna, and I thought you'd appreciate it, she said. Well, I know, he told her. Thank you, and that's as good as I remember. Better than those TV dinners? She asked with a smile. By a wide margin, Ryan said. You know, these things are packed with crap, she said. Yeah, and sometimes I think cardboard tastes better than what's inside, he told her. So why do you eat them? She asked. You don't cook anymore? You used to cook all the time. Well, I had someone to cook for at the time, Ryan said. I think it's just laziness. I don't see the need to put a lot of effort in when it's just me. Have you ever started your garage? She asked. He shook his head. No, he said. That dream died when you and Sarah left. Anyway, I'm too old and worn out to start a business. Nonsense, she said. You're what, 50? That's not too old. When you've been through what I've been through in the last 10 years, it's true, he said with a wistful look in his eyes. Trust me. But what do you live on? She asked. I'm doing fine, he said. I have enough for the rest of my life. What do you do all day? She asked. Mostly just sitting around drinking tea, he says. Watching the weeds grow. Watching the clouds. A little target practice every now and then. That's no way to live, she said. He shrugged. Maybe? This place could use a paint job, he said. Maybe I'll start doing that when I get back. It's better than doing nothing, she said. Sometimes doing nothing gives me pleasure, he said. Mind if I sit with you and watch TV? She asked. Not at all, he said, carefully moving away to give her room on the bed. She sat down next to him and they watched the movie. I remember we used to do that all the time, she said. He nodded his head. He remembered that too. I loved it when you'd sit up and rock Sarah to sleep. She looked so innocent with her little arms around your neck. You would take her to bed, snuggle her and kiss her goodnight. I miss that. Yeah, me too, he said. She snuggled against him and rested her head on his shoulders. Hold me? Please? She begged. He put his arms around her and pulled her against him. It had been years since he had done this. It felt as good to her as it had when they were still married. Suddenly, she burst into tears and sobbed on his shoulder. He pulled her against him and let her cry. I'm sorry, she said, wiping the tears from her face. I miss doing this with you so much. I can't remember Jake doing anything like that. I really messed up, didn't I? You'll get no argument from me, he said. She cried some more as he hugged her silently. They watched another program in silence, Lisa lying on Ryan's shoulder. When the program ended, she stood up and looked at him. I should go before it gets too late, she said. It's been a pleasure spending this time with you. Me too, he said. And thanks again for dinner. It was delicious. You're welcome, she said. Do something for me, please. What is it? He asked, fearing she might want it. You said the other day that little Ryan needs a grandmother, she said. And he also needs a grandfather. Will you promise to be there for him? And Sarah? Of course, he said, bringing a smile to her face. Thank you, she said. When are you going home? I'm flying out tomorrow afternoon, he said. Bob will pick me up in the morning, and I'll say goodbye to Sarah and head back. Okay, she said. Don't be a stranger, okay? I won't, he said. She kissed him on the cheek, gathered her things, and left. The next day he found that he was no longer in as much pain as before, but he still needed the cane to get around. After breakfast, Bob came in and helped him pack his things. He checked out of the hotel and they went to the hospital. When they got to Sarah's room, he saw a little boy next to her bed. He realized from the picture he had seen earlier that it was her baby Ryan. He looked up as they entered the room. Ryan, Sarah said. That's your grandfather. His name is Ryan too. Why don't you go and say hello? Hello, sir, said the little boy. Are you really my grandfather? Ryan sat back and smiled, looking at the boy. Yes, I am, he said. What happened to your eye? The little boy asked, pointing to Ryan's bandage. Well, I lost it, Ryan said. Do you want me to help you find him? The boy asked. I'm really good at finding things. Ryan laughed. I'm sure it is, Ryan said. But no, it's okay. He hugged the boy and turned to Sarah. How are you feeling? He asked her. You look better than you did yesterday. Still sore and weak, but it's getting better, she said. They're going to keep me here for a few days to monitor my progress. I guess that's reasonable, Ryan said. They talked for a while longer until Lisa came into the room. After they were all gathered, Bob looked at his watch. I think it's time to take you to the airport, he said. Ryan looked at his watch. You're right, he said. He stood up, hugged his daughter, and kissed her cheek. Get well, you hear? He asked. I will, Daddy, she said. Thank you for everything. I love you. I love you too, Princess, Ryan said. Bob, Lisa said. If you don't mind, I'd like to take Ryan to the airport. I need to talk to him about a couple things. Is that okay with you? Not at all, he said. I'll go down and get his bag. Promise me you'll come visit sometime, Ryan said to Sarah. I will, Daddy, she said. He nodded his head and left the room, Lisa following him. So, what do you need to talk to me about? Asked Ryan, getting into Lisa's BMW. I got a visit from Elmer Jenkins, the chairman of the board of directors, she said. It seems the feds got your file, and someone alerted him to it. The board will meet tonight to discuss the situation. Elmer told me that the board is leaning toward putting Jake on extended leave, at least until the court case is resolved. Nothing could have happened to a nicer guy, Ryan said. He also said they were thinking of having me serve as interim CEO, at least during the investigation and trial, if any, she said. Congratulations, he said. It's probably premature, she said. But thanks anyway. After Jake and I got married, he made me vice president and put me in charge of what he called administrative operations. Basically, I was the chief paperworker. Apparently, Elmer thinks I was quick to pick up what Jake was doing, and he seems to think the company needs a knight in charge, at least for now. I wish you luck, he said. So why are you telling me this? Because I know how the board works, she said. They're going to want to know where you got that information from. And they think you can turn on your feminine charms and get it out of me? Asked Ryan. Maybe feed me some homemade lasagna? She giggled. Maybe, she said. Well, that's not going to happen, he said. I promised anonymity, and I'm keeping my word. Besides, it's out of my hands now. I understand, she said. Completely. I won't push, I promise. They pulled up in front of the terminal, and Lisa stopped the car. She pulled a box out of her purse and held it out to him. What's that? Asked Ryan. Just a little gift, she said. I know you don't have a cell phone, so I got you one. It's the newest one with all the features. You'll be able to text, email, take pictures, shoot videos, anything you want. I've already set it up with your area code and programmed it with my number and Bob and Sarah's numbers. Thank you, he said. You didn't have to do that. I know, she said. But you promised to stay in touch, and I think this is the best way. Is there an instruction manual? He asked. Of course, she said. Good, he told her. There'll be something to read on the way back. She walked with him to the check-in counter and waited for him to get his boarding pass. She stayed with him until he reached the security checkpoint. I think that's where we say goodbye, he said. Not goodbye, she said. Just goodbye, at least for now. Let me know when you get home, okay? I will, he said. She kissed his cheek. It was good to see you again, Ryan, she said. I'm really sorry about the way things turned out. He nodded his head. I know. It was good to see you too, he said. Tell the kids I said hi for me, okay? She smiled. I will, she said, and walked away. He watched her leave before getting in line for the security check. A few hours later, he was standing in front of his house after the cab dropped him off. Home, shit, home, he thought to himself, looking at the old place. The paint had peeled off, exposing the boards that had turned gray from time. It all looked sad. A cartoon house with a sad face appeared in his imagination, with a tear dripping from one downcast eye. It reflected what he had been feeling for quite some time. He was ashamed of himself for letting the old house fall into such disrepair. It had been good for him, giving him shelter from the elements, keeping him warm in the winter and cool in the hot summer. But something had changed in him over the past few days. He no longer felt the pervasive anger and hatred that had kept him company all these years. Perhaps, he thought, it was time to reflect that back to the house. Here we come to the end of the second part of our story. Don't forget to subscribe so that YouTube can recommend you a new part of this story. What did we see? Ryan, this quiet and inconspicuous man, unexpectedly reveals his character as a determined and even cruel person. Faced with betrayal of loved ones and a desire for revenge, he turns into a hunter, ruthlessly pursuing his goal. Lisa, on the other hand, appears before us in a completely new light. Her image of an ideal wife collapses, revealing to us a vulnerable and broken woman who has become a victim of manipulation. Her decision to confront her husband and start a new life evokes respect and sympathy. And Sarah, an innocent victim of circumstances, will have to undergo a complex operation that can change her life. Her strength of spirit and her father's support become key factors in her fight for health. The relationships between the characters are full of contradictions and tension. Ryan and Lisa, once a loving couple, are now forced to coexist in the same space, but their feelings are intertwined with pain and resentment. Their story is a reminder that even the strongest bonds can be destroyed under the pressure of circumstances. We see how the past continues to haunt the heroes. Secrets, intrigues, revenge. All this is woven into a complex knot that needs to be unraveled. What awaits our heroes next? Will Ryan be able to avenge his betrayal? Will Lisa be able to start a new life without the shadow of the past? And will Sarah survive the operation? You will find the answers to these questions in the third part of our story. And in order not to miss it, I once again unobtrusively remind you, just click on one button to subscribe. Don't miss the continuation. And if you can't wait to find out what happens next, the full version of the story is already available on our Patreon. Subscribe and enjoy the exciting plot without interruptions.